buying they did on the Trump campaign.
It would be very troubling to millions of Americans if that took place.
Mr. President, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to carry out the critical work of helping protect our country, our people, and our way of life.
Well, there will be a hearing today on Capitol Hill that will take a look at whether current immigration and border policies are working.
The Democrats have been horrible on border security.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announcing the administration's pressure campaign to weaken Iran's economy until it changes its behavior.
These will indeed end up being the strongest sanctions in history when we are complete.
President Trump is hosting a ceremony for NASCAR Cup Series champion Martin Truex Jr.
One thing I know about NASCAR, they do indeed, Brian, stand for the playing of the national anthem, right? They do indeed.
Bruno Mars again.
That's good.
It's amazing how many songs he has.
You can't get enough of him.
Hey, it's Ainsley returns to New York City Tuesday.
I did.
Welcome back.
I thought this morning I should have brought y'all a gift.
It would have been great.
A bag from Harrods or something. We hit the ground running. We did not have time to shop, so I do apologize. I should have brought you some tea.
They sell that. I went to the royal wedding and all I got was that stupid T-shirt.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, yeah. They're available here in front of our building.
Right. And, I don't think you have to get us presents now that we're grown-ups. I think you can actually go on a trip. You don't have to come back.
You know what? You're right, because I did find some time to shop for Hayden. You're right.
Anyway, great job and good coverage. And
thank you.
Glad to have you back. In the meantime, on this Tuesday, we start with a Fox News alert out of Baltimore. A massive manhunt intensifying this morning for a cop killer.
Baltimore police are sending out search dogs now they're looking for the suspects after a veteran female cop is killed responding to a call.
All right, Todd Pyro live in studio with the developments in Baltimore. Todd.
Steve, Ainsley, and Brian, good morning. Right now, as the sun rises, the search for several suspects intensifies right now. They are wanted in connection with the death of that officer and is expected to ramp up the intensity there in the next few hours. Those suspects considered armed and dangerous. Meantime, schools in the area opening on time after students were locked in their buildings well into the evening during day one of the manhunt. According to the Baltimore County Police Chief, the female officer was responding to a possible burglary when witnesses reported hearing a pop, then watching her get run over by a Jeep. An autopsy and review of unreleased body cam video will help determine how she died. This marks the 26th officer killed on the job this year.
We're seeing something in this country today that we've never seen before. We're seeing police officers assaulted. The number of officers who have died in the line of duty is up this year. This is a bad time in the United States for law enforcement and the attacks that are occurring.
The death of that officer set off a manhunt for the suspects early yesterday afternoon that, as you can see, stretched into the evening hours as police searched the densely populated suburban neighborhoods in that area. Police said they recovered a Jeep that was involved but would not confirm whether it had been stolen or how many people were inside it. That unidentified officer would have marked just 4 years on the force in July. Steve, Ainsley, Brian?
A terrible story. All right, Todd, thank you very much. All right, it's 4 minutes after the top of the hour. Can you imagine this? After the President of the United States sent out that tweet 36 hours ago where he said, I'm going to demand an investigation into whether or not the Department of Justice and the FBI had a spy inside my campaign. Can you imagine if he actually sat down with the head of the FBI and the guy who was running the collusion investigation? Well, that happened yesterday.
Yes.
That's right, 4 o'clock. Can you imagine? And the president went along with Rod Rosenstein's idea that they would have the Inspector General look into any irregularity.
I love, too, that General Kelly is going to be in charge of making sure this stuff comes forward. He's not someone who people say, well, he's just a politician or he's somebody working on the campaign. Almost to his detriment, he's a law and order guy in charge. person who's going to say, no, you didn't give me all the documents. I need these, or I don't need that, or you cannot tell me that that's highly classified and that we can't see that because I have the highest classification, and that can come forward.
I just can't believe he didn't request it before that. I think he finally got to the point where he said, enough is enough. If no one else is going to request this, then I'm going to have to do it. I didn't want to be the one, but I'm going to. But if you're spied on, wouldn't you want to know why you were spied on? Wouldn't you want to know who did it and why they did it? Well, the vice president sat down with Martha last night, and he commented on it. Listen.
With the revelations that our campaign may have been the subject of surveillance by the FBI, the president, I think, is grateful that the Department of Justice is going to have the Inspector General look into it and determine and ensure that there was no surveillance done for political purposes. It would be very troubling to millions of Americans if that took place, but we're very confident that as the Inspector General has been doing their work looking at the conduct of the FBI during that period, that by adding their focus to this, that we'll get to the bottom of it, because the American people have a right to know.
What prompted that one informant to come forward? What makes you think there's just one, not come forward, but to be exposed by speaking with Clovis, Papadopoulos, and Carter Page to probe to see what their Russian connections are?
There might not just be one. Nunes was saying there might be more.
Yeah, could there be more? Sure. And the other question I think is pretty clear, as Alan Dershowitz says in today's New York Times, for the first time he's seeing a strategy with the Trump team. Instead of sitting back and wondering when this is going to end, Rudy's saying September 1st, if you want an interview. You have Senator Lindsey Graham saying, you know what, let's have a second counsel. And then you have the vice president yesterday saying what the president's saying.
Right. And while John Kelly, the chief of staff, is apparently going to be the referee between the Department of Justice, who Republicans are suggesting are stonewalling, the Republicans are also saying we need the information about that confidential informant. But it was very clear yesterday the FBI and the DOJ are not going to give up that information, because if they tell details regarding that guy, they're going to have to reveal around other informants as well, and that is bad for the system, so they're not going to do that.
Well, of course, there's criticism from the left. They don't like this president, anything he does. So they're all up in arms. They're freaking out, saying he shouldn't have done this. Listen to SOT montage. We call it a SOT montage. A montage sounds on tape. Sounds on tape. Sounds on tape of different Democrats from the Obama administration, going on all the Sunday shows or all the shows yesterday and talking about this.
I think that's actually very disturbing assault on the independence of the Department of Justice. And I think when the president, this president or any president, tries to use the Department of Justice as kind of a private investigatory body, that's not good for the country.
I think what we're seeing here is the president has just taken his all-out assault on the rule of law to a new level. Mm-hmm. And this time he is ordering up an investigation of the investigators who are examining his own campaign. You know, that's really shocking.
What's shocking about it?
It's not shocking that Sally Yates and James Clapper would go out on television, because keep in mind they were part of the Department of Justice and the CIA.
Why don't they want the information out?
Exactly. CYA. Rush Limbaugh says the original mission of people in the former administration has failed.
It's clear that the original objective failed. The original objective was to get rid of Trump. They're so powerful they can write whatever script they want and sell it to the drive-by media, have it run, by convincing people that his election was fraudulent because the Russians hated Hillary and wanted him to win because he's a doofus. It all starts with the Russians supposedly hacking the DNC server, blah, 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 blah. When that didn't work, Plan B was to ramp it up and to flood the zone. And 4 different stories every day from anonymous sources deep inside the intelligence communities or whatever, furthering the idea that there was collusion by Russia with Trump. That didn't work.
So Mark Pence said yesterday, former Clinton operative, pollster, best-selling author, he's outraged. He writes a column on the Hill saying, what's going on here with this investigation? It's got to stop. It's bad for the country, as he believed it was in 98. And there's another trend the same as 98. The president's numbers are going up. And so is, no, it's shrinking, the generic poll between Democrats and Republicans, what the people out there prefer. And then, you know who realizes that? Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So they're trying to come up with something besides Donald Trump's terrible and the Russians threw the election.
What's interesting, though, is they were all about that Russia thing. They started investigating that, and now we pulled back the layers of the onion, and it looks like they were the ones doing something wrong, and they're getting caught.
Sure. So going into the midterms, what sort of potent message will the Democrats draw on?
It better be good, something good.
It is really good. In fact, Ainsley, it is something that has won elections in the past. The Democrats are now embracing this message. Not kidding. Drain the swamp. Watch.
President Trump has embraced the most egregious establishment Republican norms and appointed the most conflict of interest-ridden cabinet in my lifetime. The swamp has never been more foul or more fetid than under this president.
Instead of delivering on his promise to drain the swamp, President Trump has become the swamp. We want Republicans and their corrupt, big donor-driven agenda to get out of the way. It has given the American people a raw deal.
Well, the Democrats' internal polling have shown that people want to weed out corruption in D.C., and rather than just talk about how Donald Trump is a bad guy and Republicans stink, they're going to say it's time to drain the swamp. Can't make it up, folks.
I'm glad it's original. All right, go to our Twitter page and vote on whether or not you think it'll work.
Jillian, are you eligible to vote on the Twitter page?
If you'll let me.
Because friends and family aren't usually allowed.
Well, then I'm not allowed. Am I a friend? I know I'm not family.
Yeah, we've adopted you.
Unless there's something I don't know.
Right.
All right, good morning, guys. Good morning to you at home. The search is on right now for 2 escaped inmates and suspected killers, and it is widening to 3 states. 3 men taking less than 10 minutes to escape from the Orangeburg, South Carolina detention center after a control board malfunctioned and unlocked cell doors. One of them was captured. His dad now locked up too, accused of helping him. 2 are still on the loose, both charged with murder. Texas Governor Greg Abbott taking on school shootings today, holding the first of several roundtable discussions on gun violence. The Republican heading to Austin to speak with officials about the Santa Fe high school shooting. The shooter's father finally speaking out, blaming his son's rampage on bullying. Polls are now open in Kentucky as voters hit the ballot box in 4 southern states today. In Georgia, a crowded Republican field for governor as 5 candidates seek the nomination. In Arkansas, incumbent Governor Asa Hutchinson is facing a challenge from Jen Morgan, and President Trump tweeting his support for the governor ahead of the race. Primaries being held in Georgia, Arkansas, and Kentucky, with runoff elections tonight in Texas. Freshmen at the Naval Academy scale a first-year rite of passage. Look at that, over 1,000 young cadets completing the annual Herndon Climb. Students forming a human pyramid to cap a 21-foot monument slathered in grease with a midshipman's hat, all to mark the end of the year. Anything to mark the end of the year.
I was there once for that.
Were
it was
you?
Really crazy. Yeah.
Were you topless too?
I was covering it. I was completely covered.
You were in your suit.
All right. Thank you, Jillian. All right. Coming up, President Trump praising the new CIA director, Gina Haspel, at her swearing in yesterday.
You live the CIA, you breathe the CIA, and now you will lead the CIA. Congratulations.
The president's praise coming hours after ripping into Obama's CIA director, John Brennan. Our next guest, a former CIA station chief, who says Brennan isn't worth the president's time.
Plus, they serve, they protect, and pull 500-ton planes.
Gina, congratulations. There is no one in this country better qualified for this extraordinary office than you. You live the CIA, you breathe the CIA, and now you will lead the CIA. Congratulations.
President Trump congratulated the new CIA director, Gina Haspel, at her swearing in hours after he slammed the Obama-era predecessor, John Brennan, not Mike Pompeo, the immediate predecessor. On Sunday, Brennan warned Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan that they would be harming democracy if they allowed the president to continue his dangerous actions. Here with more on this and the president's trip to the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, former CIA chief himself who served in Moscow, Iraq, Pakistan, and Fox, now most importantly at Fox News, Daniel Hoffman. Daniel, first off, your impression for the president to go over there yesterday, you thought was special.
I did. It was a proud moment for CIA, for our workforce. The president delivered just an eloquent speech in which he lauded CIA officers for being the most elite intelligence professionals on the planet. He spoke of Gina Haspel's dedication, commitment to the mission, told our enemies to beware because Gina is going to be a fantastic leader of our mission and our people at CIA.
So John Brennan has been ripping on the president constantly now for the last year or so. What's your advice to the president?
I mean, if I were advising the president, I'd say just don't worry about John Brennan. Let other people take care of him. John Brennan is behaving as if he were an elected politician rather than a nonpartisan retired director of the CIA. And he's causing some harm to our national security, especially when he insinuated or speculated, as he said, that Vladimir Putin could blackmail the president. John Brennan walked back those comments to the New York Times days later, but that causes a lot of damage.
He's acting like a guilty guy, and look at his record on Russia. He allowed them to get into Syria, didn't even have a heads up on it. He allowed them to annex Crimea, didn't give up a heads up on it. He allowed them to the Russians to incur into the Ukrainians, didn't say a word about it. This is his Russian record. It's not President Trump's. He's got the Russian.
I would argue that John Brennan was responsible for some of those decisions.
You point out we both read Russian roulette, at which time John Brennan urged the Gang of Eight to come forward with their intelligence on what the Trump administration in 2016 was doing with Russia. And Harry Reid went out there and said, yeah, that's what John Brennan wanted me to do. What's that about?
Yeah, that was in August of 2016. It's in Mike Isikoff's book, Russia Roulette. I think he outlines it pretty clearly, how John Brennan briefed the Gang of Eight on what he found to be connections between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin. And Senator Reid believed that John Brennan wanted to insert himself into the political debate. And that's apparently why Senator Reid went and wrote a letter to James Comey asking about the investigation.
20 seconds. Why? What's Brennan up to? You know him.
I just think he's a political appointee. He's behaving as such, but I think he's forgetting that his responsibility as a senior intelligence professional is to stick to the facts. The politicians are responsible for strategic political vision, and I think that John Brennan is crossing the line and causing some harm to our national security as a result.
And the lack of self-control is striking. All right, Dan, we got to have you back to talk about Iran, the Secretary of State's remarks yesterday. We'll do that later. Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
All right, 10 minutes before the bottom of the hour. Kids poisoned by ADHD medications at an alarming rate. Our next guest has a warning for those parents. And are you ready for President Obama on TV again? You could soon be binge watching Barack and Michelle Obama on Netflix. They got a big deal. Hey, Susan Rice is here. I wonder if that's a coincidence.
I'm a
6:24 here in New York City. Time for some Fox News headlines. First up, a Capitol Hill hearing today will examine if current immigration and border policies are working. Doesn't look like we're working right there. It comes as House Budget Committee member Diane Black introduces the Border Wall Trust Fund Act. It would allow people to crowdfund the wall. Money out of your pocket would pay for the wall. And tip off illegals, and you could go to prison even if you're the mayor. That's the message Iowa Congressman Steve King is sending under his Mayor Libby Schaaf Act proposal. The bill taking aim at the California Oakland mayor after she warned about an upcoming ICE raid. Government officials could face up to 5 years in prison. We will keep you posted. All right, Ainsley?
Okay, thank you, Steve. The rate of children poisoned by ADHD medications accidentally and intentionally is surging. An alarming new study revealing about 10,000 children under the age of 19 were hospitalized, and 3 of them died between 2000 and 2014. Our next guest warns about these toxic results as parents are being pressured to medicate their children as young as 5 years old. Pediatrician Dr. Diane Hess joins us now with more. Dr. Hess, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So there's several stories here that are, when you read these articles that we can talk about today, it all involves ADHD. First question is, are kids being overdiagnosed?
I completely believe they are. I think that the class sizes are too big, that children aren't getting physical fitness like they should. So you can have a kindergarten class with up to 40 children. Here in New York City, children only get physical education in elementary schools 1 day a week for 45 minutes. So you have these kids that are bundles of energies. They need recess, they need yard, they need breaks. And the teachers are overworked, underpaid, and the class sizes are big. So when a child acts out, it's immediately, oh, please have them evaluated. I think they have ADD. No, they're actually children children. They're children with energy who want to move and need time to get that extra energy off. And if they're forced to sit all day or sit on a rug, they're just going to start leaning on other kids and bothering other kids, because that's what kids do.
You're right. Teachers have so much pressure, too, to make sure their test scores are good. They don't want all these crazy, loud kids running around their classroom. The classroom sizes are getting bigger. So how does a parent know if their child has ADHD?
Well, oftentimes the teachers or the school administrator will put pressure on a parent to go to the doctor to get, oh, this child needs Ritalin. You need to have them, put on Ritalin. We need to do something with this kid. So that's when the pediatrician role come in to see if this child really has learning issues and attention issues versus is this child just a normal kid who needs to move a little bit more. If you're really concerned that a child has ADHD, especially in those young children like 5, 6, that's a really hard diagnosis to make. You can send them to a developmental pediatrician or a neuropsychologist or even a child psychiatrist. Now, even in New York City, it's hard to get an appointment with these specialists. So across the country, there's a huge shortage of these doctors who are able to see these children. So oftentimes, pediatricians, general pediatricians, and family medicine doctors are left to make that decision. Is this child, does this child really need medicine?
What are the dangers if the child really doesn't need the medicine?
Well, if the child doesn't need the medicine, it's going to be completely ineffective, and it can make you have a rapid heartbeat. It can make you feel agitated. If a child has a tic disorder or, blinking like often children do and making faces, that medicine could potentiate that. It causes insomnia. So you never want to give a medicine to somebody who does not need that.
Can it lead to drug addiction later in life?
No, usually we don't see drug addiction later in life, but it suppresses their appetite immensely. So those kids, they can only take the breakfast.
That's another issue. You hear about all these college students, all these girls are taking it to lose weight.
Yes, so it completely suppresses the appetite. But actually, I'm an obesity specialist. So the long-term studies now show that the kids who take ADHD medicine from a very young age, they're often very thin when they're young. But within 2 or 3 years, they actually have rapid onset of weight gain, and they're actually more overweight or obese compared to their peers at the end of their treatment.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hess, for being here.
You're welcome.
President Trump demanding answers from Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein about a possible FBI spy in his campaign. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here to break that all down for us. And terrifying moments as police dodge bullets. Body cameras capturing the heroic takedown of an armed gunman at the Trump International Doral Resort. The dramatic video coming up.
I just saw the sign and it had Judge Napolitano on it. And here he is. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Good
morning,
to be with
Judge.
you. Ainsley, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching.
Great experience watching.
It was so fun.
So you had a great experience watching Ainsley?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Oh, that's good. Because you might ask Ainsley, how was her experience in Britain?
How was it, Ainsley?
It was so much fun. I love that kind of thing. And what girl doesn't like a wedding? How many times have y'all watched it since you've come back?
Oh, 5.
I've watched it, I think, 3 times.
Tell that you loved it.
It was fun.
Yeah, you were great.
But of course, we didn't book you for that.
No,
we booked
not
you
at
to
all.
talk a little
Far
bit.
more serious things.
How about what happened yesterday, apparently in the Oval Office, we believe, where you've got the director of the FBI, the deputy attorney general, and they're meeting together with the president. They're talking a little bit about how going forward the IG is going to look into whether or not there was any funny business regarding a spy planted in the campaign. And also it sounds like John Kelly, the chief of staff, is going to broker some sort of release of these confidential documents that the Republicans and their investigators on Capitol Hill have been wanting a very long time.
So we don't know what the president knows, but the president learned something in the past several days, and he obviously has intelligence and law enforcement sources that report to him, which led him to believe that the FBI either had an FBI agent undercover implanted in his campaign or dispatched a person, I think this story is more likely, to communicate with people in the campaign to see if they would spill the beans about any conspiracy to involve receiving something of value from a foreign
What's the deal with the
government.
email? At one point, the guy asked.
Right. So, look, if the FBI, I'll take the most extreme
But
case.
Judge, the second part is true. I mean, we have Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, multiple sources. It's true.
This is the way criminal investigations start, with off-the-cuff conversations between either law enforcement or some place, you don't need a search warrant for it. The Fourth Amendment protects persons, houses, papers, and effects. Right. Now, you're talking to a privacy advocate. Even I have to recognize that the courts say it doesn't protect every conversation. So if an FBI agent got his way into the boardroom at Trump Tower for a top secret meeting of the campaign, they'd need a search warrant for that. In order to get the search warrant, they'd have to present evidence of criminality to a federal judge. But if they dispatch someone, this person we're calling the professor, to talk in relatively public places about campaign issues, and we know to whom he talked. We've interviewed the people to whom he talked. Sam Clovis, Carter Page, Papadopoulos, I don't think we've ever interviewed. And they have an open conversation with him. He takes it back to law enforcement. That's the way criminal investigations often begin. Then they amass what they have. If it reaches the level of probable cause, meaning more likely than not, we're going to find more evidence of crimes, then they go to a federal judge and get a warrant. That is a hypothetical scenario, Brian, because we don't know exactly what happened.
We even know the conversations.
Well,
we even know how they took off or where they took place.
We don't know who dispatched them and why. And this is the president's angst. Was the professor dispatched in order to entrap people? Was the professor dispatched in order to frustrate and stumble the Trump campaign? Or was the professor dispatched because law enforcement had a legitimate reason to believe that there was legitimate evidence of crimes going on? We don't know the answer.
DOJ is saying they will give the classified information, those materials, to Congress. Do you believe that will happen? And
No.
Secondly, do they have to tell Mueller what's going on? DOJ.
Okay. Let me try and unravel that. I don't believe DOJ will give everything, and I'll tell you why. Because under the law, the DOJ has the right to keep from everyone information that's presented to a grand jury or information that would expose a source when they're still in the midst of a criminal investigation. As ugly as this sounds, Mueller's investigation is a criminal investigation. The subject of that investigation is the President of the United States. Right. They would never tip their hand to the President, to anybody, about what they have and where they're going until the investigation is over. And they've either written a report about him, charged them with something, or exonerated him.
Right. We should also point out Fox News has not confirmed the identity of the source. There are stories floating around in a lot of major stories.
That's why we're not using the name.
So that's
Judge,
exactly
from
right.
what you know, from what we just went over, you just described everything. So from what you know about the law and investigations, does anything unnerve you about the process?
Yes, it does unnerve
So tell me what specifically?
If the FBI, and we have these texts from Strzok and his friend, so we know the attitude that some of them had about Donald Trump, use the power of the government's law enforcement facilities to interfere with or frustrate the Trump campaign, that would be a crime of enormous magnitude, the like of which I don't believe we've ever seen in American history.
What if there was reason? They'll say, well, there was a reason. And
okay, you almost used the right word because you're so good at this, Kilmeade. The phrase is articulable suspicion. Suspicion you can...
Should have used.
Correct. You're right there. It's like when you were teaching me to swing a bat. Right. You're so good. If there was articulable suspicion, that is the linchpin of what the government needs to commence a criminal investigation. So if they're pure, if they're not doing this for political reasons, they dispatch the professor or whoever to have a conversation at a bar with somebody about the campaign. They need articulable suspicion, a suspicion that they can state as to why they think
and they
it's
say
worth
that.
pursuing.
Right, and
at some point they have to reveal what that articulable suspicion is.
That's right, and that's why the Republicans and their investigators want more details. Judge, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
We learned a lot.
This news breaks like every 10 minutes.
I know.
Something's going to happen. Trust me, before the show is over.
So in your bedroom, you don't have stairs. You have a fireman's pole because every 2 minutes you get a call. You got to run down. It's an emergency. Call the judge.
4:15 this morning, they said, get in here a half an hour earlier.
Well, thank you for doing it. All right, it's 22 minutes now before the top of the hour.
And let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
Good morning to you guys. Good Tuesday morning to you. Let's get you caught up on some of the stories we're following. The son of a Boston bombing first responder admits to planning his own terror attack. Alexander Chicolo pleading guilty, plotting to strike a college campus with guns and homemade bombs in the name of ISIS. He was arrested in July 2015 after his father, a police captain, tipped off authorities, and he received guns from someone working with the FBI. He faces up to 20 years in prison. Dramatic body cam footage capturing a gunfight at President Trump's Florida golf club. Well, this all went down after a man walked in with a gun into Trump Doral. He draped an American flag over the front desk, started yelling about the president, and pulled the fire alarm. Police eventually shooting him in the legs. During this bizarre exchange in court, he admitted to setting off the alarm.
Happy push alarm.
You know, sir, everything's being recorded. Your attorney turned the microphone off, though. Probably a wise move.
Nobody was seriously hurt. From the White House to the movies, the Obamas signing a multi-year deal to produce films and series for Netflix. The deal includes scripted and unscripted series as well as documentaries and features. Former President Barack Obama saying they hope to, quote, promote greater empathy and understanding between peoples and help them share their stories with the entire world. The first content from the Obamas will appear in 2019. A major show of strength by New York's finest. The NYPD coming together to pull an airplane and raise money for pediatric cancer. Just look at this. Law enforcement officers from the U.S. and the UK battling to see who could pull a plane 100 feet the fastest. A team representing the Nassau County Corrections Department took the crown for the 5th straight year. The plane used in the annual competition is named Blue Finest in honor of the NYPD. That is incredible.
So America won.
Yes.
All right.
Pulling a plane? Jeez.
No kidding. A little faster if you wanted to take off.
In the beginning, yeah, it's hard in the beginning, but then once you get started, right?
You've done it?
Inertia.
No, never done it.
All right, it's 19 minutes before the top of the hour, and Adam's got the weather headlines.
Hey guys,
the suit, Adam.
Hey guys, thank you very much. Beautiful day in parts of the country. Unfortunately, if you're along the East Coast, maybe a little bit of rain. Here's your temperatures. Spots up into the middle 60s for the eastern half. Cooler out west as you're looking at mostly temperatures in the 50s to the mid 50s. A lot of that rain, though, coming down in the northeast in the next couple of hours. This is the largest system moving across the country right now. So some of the major cities from D.C. to New York up to Boston by lunchtime, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. That's when you're going to be looking at heavy rain moving across some of these areas. It's been rainy across the south, 6 to 8 inches in Florida in spots. The same is case in Carolinas and Virginia. So guys, it's been soggy.
9 days. I mean, it's ridiculous how much rain there is.
I have a Rick Ragmuth umbrella you can use.
Oh, really? All right, we'll find out about that website a little bit later. Meanwhile, straight ahead, Florida Congressman Ron DeSantis, who wants to be the next governor, will be here live. Johnny Joey Jones on why he could not get in a ride in an amusement park. And Dana Lash on the aftermath of the Texas shooting, as well as Governor Matt Bevin, a businessman gone politician.
Plus, faith, family, and service are the values that built Dollar General into a billion-dollar company. The former CEO, Cal Turner Jr., is here now to share how his family's humble beginnings built that empire $1 at a time.
Thank you for all the toys you provide my daughter.
We're all American.
Right now, warning, beware of zombies. Officials in Lake Worth, Florida, sending out this alert to more than 7,000 customers who lost power, due to, quote, extreme zombie activity. It turns out it was fake. The city is now investigating how that happened. And a monkey roams wild in a Texas airport for nearly 2 hours. I'm not kidding. Dawkins, that's his name, was on his way to an animal sanctuary near San Antonio. At least that's where he told us he was going. When he escaped his cargo crate, he's now safe at his new home. A lot of questions, no time to ask them.
Time. All right, Brian, thank you. Meanwhile, faith, family, and service, just a few of the core values that turned once small-town business Dollar General into a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 300 company. In his new memoir, My Father's Business, the former Dollar General CEO shares how his family's humble beginnings built an empire. Join us right now, author and former Dollar General CEO Cal Turner Jr. Cal, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Your story
Good
is
morning.
unbelievable. Just a little backstory. You went to Vanderbilt, you went to the Navy, you were an officer in the Navy, and then you went to the company business, and you could not do any job there, but they made you the boss.
Yes.
You started at the top.
Well, it helps to be the boss's son.
Yeah, exactly.
But I tried to get over that with everybody and laugh at myself as boss's son so I could connect with everyone better.
Luckily, you had your father to teach you the way, and one of the things, because you grew up in a small town in Kentucky, and that's where the core of the business was, your customers were farmers, and you had to look at what the farmers needed.
Indeed, we did. And as children, we prayed for snow when my father had bought too many overshoes and couldn't sell them and pay off the banks if we didn't get results from our prayer.
I understand that you had a goal of bringing ministry and faith into business, which is, for some, a tough combination.
Well, it worked in our company where the connection with people is the most important dynamic of retailing. And we always had a connection with our customer.
Well, it's a brilliant business model because everything's a dollar. And I know it started back in the 30s when a dollar was a lot of money.
Yes.
But today you look at it, I mean, my wife and I go to Dollar General all the time. We buy batteries there, we buy napkins, we buy all sorts of stuff. And that is a potent message. You want something affordable, you go into that place.
That's right. But my dad learned he had a problem when he priced shoes at $1 a shoe and found he was stuck with the right or the left. So then he went over $1, but even dollar prices that are simple.
Yeah. What was it like? I know in your book you talk a lot about the challenges you faced when you were running Dollar General, but it must have been tough when you had to fire your brother, and the same year the board fired your father, and there you are left holding the bag.
That was the toughest year of my life and the toughest decision of my life. And it's a whole separate chapter in the book, Steve.
Okay, what a good tease. Does the book cost $1?
Well, I really wanted it
One
to.
chapter, $1. All right, check it out. It's called My Father's Business. Cal Turner Jr., real pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right, coming up, House Republicans now calling for a second special counsel to investigate alleged misconduct at the FBI and the DOJ. Ron DeSantis, one of the Republicans, he's going to join us about 20 minutes, and he'll explain what kind of resolution they have called for. And she called our president a white supremacist. Now ESPN host Jemele Hill is Journalist of the Year. Lawrence Jones has something to say about that. Come on in, Lawrence. You're next.
Once blasted our president as a white supremacist, but apparently this controversial ESPN host deserves a big award.
The National Association of Black Journalists have awarded vocal anti-Trump critic Jemele Hill with their Journalist of the Year award.
Here to react, editor-in-chief of campusreform.org, Lawrence Jones. Lawrence, I always thought journalists broke stories. She has commentary. Whether you agree with it or not, I thought that's a brand new nuance to that category.
Yeah, the bottom line is that she's unemployed from hosting her own TV show. This is not something we should be promoting. At the end of the day, I want people that look like me, people that looked up to her, to have someone on TV that is going to forever, show them that they can do it. Now she can't do that. Now she's unemployed. The National Black Association of Journalists are literally saying now we're going to applaud unemployment, and that's not something I stand for.
Well, once when I was in journalism school, it was all about just the facts. But now, apparently, journalism looks a lot like activism, and sometimes you watch the briefing at the White House. There are a lot of activists in there,
and apparently activism is starting to pay more too because they're continuing to keep their jobs. At the end of the day, look, you can have your opinions about Donald Trump. Sometimes I disagree with him. A lot of times I agree with his policies. But at the end of the day, you got to know your audience. You got to know the people that you represent. And half of the country is on the right, and half of them is on the left. And I think she just made a bad business move.
Speaking of audience, when they pulled her off the show, the ratings on her show went up. She and Michael Smith were pulled from that show.
Of course they
Michael
did,
Smith
because
is still
you're
there, right?
bashing people that voted for the president. And so I just don't think it's a smart move when you get into this business of entertainment. And you're going to always disappoint someone when you start talking about politics.
National Association of Black Journalists, they released this statement. They said she uses her platform to address national, social, and cultural issues in addition to sports. Hill nearly broke the internet last year when she criticized President Donald Trump.
Oh, you mean that platform that she no longer has? I mean, that's the example.
Lawrence, I have no problem. Like, if she does the right thing in a big story and she loses her job, a lot of times your editors don't appreciate your work if you do a good job. My question is, her commentary made the network look bad? Is that your contention?
No, it made the network look bad. And at the end of the day, she wasn't representing her audience. At the end of the day, we're here to pay bills, okay? This is capitalist. It's a free market industry where your job is determined by your ratings. If her ratings were high, she would still be on air no matter what she said. But that just wasn't the case. You're there to serve your audience, give them the content that they need, and then she would have been able to forever to keep her job. But that wasn't the case. Ratings actually went up ever since she left.
Well, this organization has been in business for a long time, and that's the woman that they wanted to give the award to, and they're free to do that.
Right, they're free to give the award to him, but at the end of the day, is this a standard as black journalists that you want to set for the next generation? I thought we believed in black magic of black business owners. How can she donate to those young black folks if she no longer has a platform? I want him, if I had a little girl to say, hey, if she wanted to go in sports, she can listen, she can look up to Jamil. Well, there is no Jamil anymore.
He is going to be later today on Outnumbered on this channel. We'll be watching for you, Lawrence. Thank you so much.
All right, coming up next hour, Johnny, Joey Jones, Dana Lash, and so much more.
Gold.